Events did occur in the same general region, but that phrasing masks something extraordinary. When you examine the actual coordinates, the actual error boxes where the instruments localized these events, the overlap becomes striking, tighter than publicly emphasized, much tighter. No formal scientific paper has been published that overlays the three-dimensional trajectory of 3I Atlas with the uncertainty region of GRB 250702b. No one has officially mapped them together in space and time and asked the uncomfortable question, could these events be connected? Let's drift deeper into the mystery now, like sinking into the comfort of your pillow, letting go of the need for immediate answers. Part 4. The Physics of Arrival. Here's where we need to think about something strange. Something that comes from the laws of physics that govern fast-moving objects. When something moves close to the speed of light, reality itself warps around it. Time slows down, space contracts, and light radiation behaves in unusual ways. It gets compressed ahead of the moving object, focused like a searchlight pointing in the direction of travel. Think about a bullet fired from a gun. The gunpowder explodes, and that explosion produces light, a muzzle flash. But here's the key. If you're standing in front of the gun, you see the flash at almost exactly the same moment the bullet arrives. The light and the projectile travel at nearly the same speed over short distances. You don't see the flash first and then wait for the bullet. They arrive together. Now imagine something moving at 99% of the speed of light, or faster, if such a thing were possible through some manipulation of space-time we don't yet understand. At those speeds, the radiation produced by the object, whether from friction with interstellar medium, or from a deceleration mechanism, or from any process at all, arrives just slightly before the object itself. If you were watching such an object approach, you wouldn't see it coming, not until the very last moment, because the light carrying the information about its approach is only barely outrunning the object. First, you'd see a flash, a burst of radiation from dead ahead. Then, perhaps within hours or days, the object itself would arrive. Let yourself feel the immensity of that idea. An object approaching from the deep cosmos, fast enough that we have almost no warning. The flash we interpret as a distant explosion might actually be a braking maneuver, a deceleration, a slowing down from relativistic speeds that produces a tremendous release of energy that streams ahead of the object as it enters our local space. Part 5. The Nature of Coincidence. In the comfortable darkness of your room right now, safe and warm, consider what coincidence really means. If you flip a coin and it lands on heads, that's not surprising. Even if you flip it and get heads 5 times in a row, it's unlikely but not shocking. But what if the coin landed on its edge? What if it landed on heads every time you flipped it, 100 times in a row? What if it landed on heads, and at that exact moment, a meteor struck your house? At some point, we stop calling things coincidence and start looking for connections. Here are the elements of our story. First, we have an interstellar object, only the third ever discovered, a rare event in itself. These objects are so uncommon that each discovery makes international news. Second, we have a gamma-ray burst, which happens somewhere in the observable universe, maybe once per day. But from any particular direction in the sky, they're incredibly rare. Third, these two events occurred within 24 hours of each other. Fourth, they came from the same narrow region of space, aligned to within the measurement uncertainties. Fifth, the gamma-ray burst had unusual characteristics. Its duration was odd. Its afterglow pattern was structured and anomalous, not matching the standard profiles of stellar collapse or neutron-star merger. Sixth, the distance to the gamma-ray burst remains uncertain. Typically, these bursts are so far away that measuring their distance involves detecting a galaxy at the same location and measuring its redshift, how much the expansion of the universe has stretched its light. But GRB 250702b's afterglow was ambiguous. The redshift measurements were unclear. Some analyses suggested it might be much closer than a typical GRB. Perhaps local. Perhaps even within our own galaxy's neighborhood. Let each of these facts settle into your mind like stones dropped into still water, ripples spreading outward. If the burst was distant, billions of light years away, then yes, it's a remarkable coincidence. But coincidences happen in a universe with billions of galaxies. But if the burst was close, then the geometric alignment matters enormously. Then we're not talking about two unrelated events that happen to appear in the same direction across the vast emptiness of intergalactic space. We're talking about two events that occurred in the same local volume of space at the same time. We're talking about causality. Part 6. The silence of authority. As you sink deeper toward sleep, consider how knowledge spreads through our world. Scientists make observations. They analyze data. They write papers. The papers undergo peer review. Eventually, a consensus forms, and that consensus becomes the official story. The truth we teach in schools. The narrative we accept. But what happens when the data is ambiguous? When the official classification relies on assumptions that might not be fully tested? When careful language like the same general region, technically accurate, but emotionally misleading. The scientists who classified GRB 250702b as a conventional distant burst were not lying. They followed standard procedures. They made reasonable assumptions based on typical GRB characteristics. And faced with an anomalous data, they chose the most conventional interpretation. Because the alternative, the possibility that this burst was connected to the interstellar object, that it represented something other than a natural stellar explosion, was too extraordinary to propose without overwhelming evidence. And perhaps they were right to be cautious. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, as the saying goes. But here, in the darkness, in the liminal space between waking and sleep, we can ask questions that don't fit into academic papers. We can wonder about the things that official reports set aside. What if 3I, Atlas, wasn't just a rock? What if it was something else? A probe, a ship, something launched by intelligence from another star system, traveling for hundreds of thousands of years across the frozen void, carrying what? Information? Life? A message? And what if that flash, that gamma-ray burst, was the signature of its arrival? The cosmic equivalent of air brakes. The friction of space-time itself as something slowed from nearly light speed down to velocities where it could be observed, studied, understood. What if, on July the 1st, year 2025, humanity detected an interstellar visitor, not because we were good at astronomy, but because it wanted to be found? Part 7. The implications of contact. Let yourself drift now, floating in the space between thoughts. Imagine what it would mean if this story were true. For all of human history, we've wondered if we're alone. We've built radio telescopes to listen for signals. We've sent probes to the edges of our solar system carrying messages in case anyone finds them. We've searched for biosignatures in the atmospheres of distant planets. We've dreamed of meeting someone else out there in the cosmic dark. And perhaps, on a quiet day in summer, 2025, it happened. Not with fanfare, not with obvious signals and clear intentions, but subtly, the way a skilled traveler might arrive, testing the waters first, observing, seeing how we react to the pieces of the puzzle before revealing the full picture. The flash came first, captured by automated satellites, logged in databases, classified as something natural and distant. a bureaucratic process, a routine event. Then the object itself appeared, moving through our neighborhood at speeds that suggested it came from very far away. Discovered by automated surveys, classified as a natural interstellar rock, another routine event. Only when you put them together, when you see the timing and the geometry and the physics, does the pattern emerge. Like a figure hidden in static, it's there once you know how to look. But here's the beautiful, terrifying, wondrous thing. We might never know for sure. The object has already passed through our solar system by now, continuing its journey into the dark. The flash lasted only seconds. The data is archived but not definitive. Scientists have moved on to other discoveries. The world keeps turning, and maybe that's okay. Maybe the universe operates on timescales longer than our attention spans. Maybe first contact isn't a moment, but a process, one that unfolds slowly, carefully, allowing us time to adjust to the implications. Or maybe it really was just a coincidence. Two unrelated events that our pattern-seeking minds connected because we want so desperately to find meaning in the cosmos. Both possibilities are profound. Part 8. The Peace of Uncertainty. As you lie here now, on the edge of sleep, your consciousness beginning to blur and drift, consider this. You are made of atoms forged in the hearts of stars that exploded billions of years ago. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the oxygen you breathe, all of it created in nuclear furnaces and scattered across space by supernovae. You are, quite literally, stardust. An arrangement of cosmic matter that has organized itself in such a way that the universe can look back at itself and wonder. On July the 1st, year 2025, something moved through our neighborhood. Something from beyond. Whether it was a simple rock or something more, it carried with it the same message. The universe is vast, ancient, and full of mysteries. We float on a small world in an unremarkable solar system on the outer edge of a spiral galaxy containing 400 billion stars. Our galaxy is one of trillions in the observable universe. Time extends billions of years behind us, and perhaps infinitely ahead. In that context, what does it matter if we fully understand every gamma-ray burst? What does it matter if we can prove beyond doubt whether an interstellar object was natural or artificial? What matters is that we're here to wonder about it, that we're curious, that we look up at the night sky and feel connected to something larger than ourselves. The official story says GRB 250702b was a distant stellar explosion, unconnected to 3I, Atlas, a coincidence of timing and direction. The alternative story says we witnessed something unprecedented, the arrival of an interstellar visitor, announced by the cosmic equivalent of thunder, visible for those who know how to interpret the signs. Both stories are beautiful. Both invite us to dream. Part 9. Descent into sleep. Your breathing has slowed now. The boundary between waking and dreaming grows thin. The darkness of your room merges with the darkness of space. Imagine yourself floating among the stars, weightless and serene. You can see the Milky Way stretching across the sky, a river of light made from hundreds of billions of suns. You can see galaxies beyond smudges of pale luminescence, each containing its own hundreds of billions of stars, its own planets, its own mysteries. Somewhere out there, 3I, Atlas, continues its journey. It passed through our solar system like a ship passing in the night, here and then gone, visible for only a brief moment before continuing into the eternal darkness. Maybe it was just a rock, a fragment of a shattered planet, wandering the galaxy for millions of years, briefly catching the light of our sun before moving on. Maybe it was something more, a message, a test, a probe sent by intelligences who wanted to see if we were ready to notice. Either way, it reminds us that we are part of something incomprehensibly vast, that the universe is active and dynamic and full of events that dwarf our concerns, that mysteries remain. The gamma-ray burst, whether near or far, whether connected or coincidental, released more energy in a few seconds than our civilization has used in all of human history. That power exists out there, woven into the fabric of reality, available to any intelligence that learns to harness it. We are young. Our species has been looking at the stars with scientific instruments for only a few centuries. We've been sending messages into space for less than a single human lifetime. We've detected only 3 interstellar objects ever. We're beginners, infants, learning to take our first steps in a cosmos that has been conducting its business for 13.8 billion years. And that's okay. That's beautiful. Part 10. The comfort of infinity. Let the story dissolve now, like morning mist under sunlight. Let the specifics fade, the dates, the designations, the technical details. What remains is simpler and more profound. The universe is speaking to us all the time, in the light of distant stars, in the patterns of cosmic background radiation left over from the Big Bang, in the dance of planets and the slow evolution of galaxies. In the rare passage of objects from beyond our solar system, we are learning to listen. Slowly, imperfectly, but we're learning. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, you join that ancient conversation. Your consciousness quiets. Your awareness expands. The boundaries between self and universe become permeable. You are the cosmos, experiencing itself. You are stardust contemplating stars. You are an improbable arrangement of atoms that has somehow achieved the ability to wonder, to question, to dream. Whether 3i Atlas was artificial or natural doesn't change the fact that it came from somewhere else, from another sun, from depths of space so vast that light from its origin point might have been traveling since before the Earth formed. It touched our world briefly and moved on, like a piece of cosmic driftwood floating on an infinite ocean, and we noticed. That alone is extraordinary. Epilogue. Until the next visitor. The stars continue their slow dance. Galaxies spiral. Supernovae explode and seed space with heavy elements. Planets form and cool, and sometimes give birth to life. And perhaps, just perhaps, intelligences arise, build civilizations, reach for the stars, and send messages out into the dark. Maybe we'll detect another interstellar object next year. Maybe we won't see another one for decades. Maybe the next one will be even stranger than 3i Atlas, challenging our understanding in new ways. Or maybe we'll never truly know what passed through our solar system in the summer of 2025. Maybe the data will remain ambiguous, the debate unsettled, the mystery intact, and that's a kind of gift. Because in a universe that's increasingly mapped and measured and explained, it's the mysteries that remind us how much we still have to discover, how much wonder remains. Rest now, dear listener. Let your mind release its grip on questions. Let your body sink into the comfort of your bed. Let the story carry you gently into sleep, where dreams and reality merge, where anything is possible, where visitors from distant stars might walk on worlds you create with each breath. The universe is vast. Time is long. Mystery is abundant, and you are here to experience it all. Sleep well. Dream deeply. The stars are watching over you. Welcome back to Inner Peace Portal. Tonight we gather slowly around a story that sits at the intersection of awe and unease. Breathe in, breathe out. Let the edges of urgency soften. In this space, we are not here to amplify fear, nor to dismiss curiosity. We are here to listen carefully to the data, to the imagination, and to the quiet habits of the human heart that turn unknowns into narratives. This is a long listening. Take your time, read slowly. Let each image settle before the next arrives. Below is a deep, contemplative exploration, a tapestry woven from scientific fact, plausible speculation, and the human stories that unfurl when the sky presents something unexpected. All dates are written as you asked, in alphabetic form. There are moments when the world feels like a carefully balanced bowl. Underneath that fragile balance are slow currents, the grinding of plates beneath our feet, the patient tug of gravity across the solar system, the distant thunder of processes measured in millions of years. Most of the time, these currents are invisible. We live as if the bowl is stable, and yet, once in a while, a new variable appears on the horizon. An unexpected visitor, and even the thought of perturbation can ripple through the human mind like a tremor. In the summer of 2025, a small object drifting from beyond our stellar neighborhood was detected. It came into our field of view almost as a whisper, an anomaly among thousands of tracked bodies. Instruments logged a high speed and a hyperbolic trajectory. Astronomers catalogued it as the third confirmed interstellar object in the modern era and named it 3I, Atlas. For many, it was a curiosity, an opportunity to sample material born in another system. For some others, for those attuned to narratives of instability, it became a question with sharp edges. Could this transient visitor be more than a mote of ice and dust? Could it be sufficiently massive to tug at the solar system's balance? Let us first hold to what was measured. Early polarimetric observations suggested unusual scattering properties. Spectroscopic lines hinted at metal-rich components in greater proportion than many familiar comets. Such signals can mean many things: different grain sizes, unusual surface coatings, processing by radiation in another environment, or simply complex mixtures that we have not yet catalogued in full. The James Webb class instruments and ground-based arrays spoke in numbers and wavelengths. Specialists translated those numbers into cautious hypotheses. One plausible interpretation was straightforward. 3I Atlas had formed in a colder, metal-enriched environment and preserved an atypical composition. Another interpretation, far less conservative, proposed that the object's density was higher than expected, that beneath the coma of gases lay a compacted, perhaps partially metallic core, and that its mass could be significant. From physical possibility to planetary prophecy, however, is a long road. Gravitational influence diminishes extremely rapidly with distance. Unless an object is both massive and surprisingly close, the tidal and orbital perturbations it can inflict on planets are typically negligible compared to the existing gravitational architecture imposed by the Sun and the well-known giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune. Yet dreams are stubborn. A speculative video began to travel across social feeds. Is 3I Atlas destabilizing the solar system? The piece artfully connected three parallel anomalies that had occurred around the period of perihelion. A large earthquake alarm in Japan, a cascade of server failures that rippled through the internet, and an unexpectedly strong solar flare. The rhetorical hook was intoxicating. What if these disparate events were not random, but a chain reaction set in motion by a passing interstellar mass? It is useful, before we step further into story, to separate three things: fact, plausible inference, and imaginative linkage. This is the discipline of a steady mind. Facts are the anchor. Inference is the bridge. built from reason. Imaginative linkage is the human habit of stitching narrative across gaps. All three matter for different purposes: science, hypothesis, and culture, but they are not interchangeable. Fact: 3I, Atlas, was detected. Its motion is hyperbolic. Spectroscopic and polarimetric data showed anomalies relative to typical solar system comets. Those are the scaffolding stones. Plausible inference: if the object were denser than expected, its mass could be higher. If it passed unusually close to a particular region, tidal forces might be measurable, given high enough mass. Those are careful conditional statements that invite calculation and observation. Imaginative linkage: earthquake alarms, server outages, solar flares. These make a compelling narrative when placed beside one another. The human mind loves narrative symmetry. But here, the temptation is to conflate correlation with causation. Why do we feel the pull toward causation? Because stories where things are connected help the mind make meaning. Fear, too, is efficient at seeing patterns. When an earthquake shakes the ground, when infrastructure falters, when space weather roils, people seek explanations that feel commensurate with the emotional scale of their experience. Saying, "A massive, unknown object is changing, everything has a certain poetic justice." But the world rarely offers such tidy narratives. Let us slow down and examine the physics. Gravitational perturbation changes with the inverse square of distance. Tidal forces are even more punishing, falling off with the cube of distance. A passing object must be either extremely massive or extraordinarily close to exert effects comparable to those we observe on Earth from known bodies. The Moon's tidal influence, for instance, shapes our oceans daily. Jupiter's mass sculpts the outer solar system over eons. For a small interstellar body, even one denser than our usual expectations, to trundle in and rearrange plate boundaries or unleash geomagnetic failures would require conditions that the raw orbital data did not support. But the public conversation does not live in equations alone. A subset of observers asked a different question. What if the object's interaction with the solar environment had cascading, indirect effects? Suppose the interstellar visitor interacted with the heliosphere in ways that modified solar wind behavior, and suppose that subtle modulation coincided with an already stressed magnetosphere. Could that produce anomalous geomagnetic conditions that, in turn, stressed global technological infrastructure? The chain is long, and at each link, uncertainty mounts. The solar-terrestrial coupling requires energetic thresholds. Magnetospheric disturbances strong enough to induce widespread server outages are rare and typically associated with major coronal mass ejections. The observational record did not support a solar event of unprecedented scale at that particular interval. But wildcards are always tempting. Another variant of the theory posited that a localized gravitational nudge might increase stress along an already critical fault line. Palung Nankai in Japan was often mentioned. Imagine the plates like brittle glass, close to a tipping point. A tiny external nudge, the argument goes, could be the final straw. This linear, mechanical intuition possesses a certain visceral clarity, and that is perhaps why it circulates so readily. But plate tectonics is not that simple. Stress, accumulation, and release happens over centuries, not in pulses easily attributable to passing bodies, unless those bodies are enormous and intimate in proximity. Geodetic instruments like GPS networks measure crustal deformation with exquisite sensitivity. In the months surrounding the event, no anomalous, coherent deformation field was reported that traced back to a singular external gravitational cause. The scientific consensus, the steady voice that waits for analysis before making claims, leaned toward internal tectonic processes and complex local triggers rather than an interstellar saboteur. Let us be compassionate toward the voices that imagined a cosmic cause. They were asking a deep and meaningful question. Are we secure? The modern world is a woven web of interdependence. An outage of servers can cascade into real human suffering. When systems fail, people ask, from where does fragility emerge? The comet narrative provided a metaphysical explanation in a moment of panic. It provided not only a reason but also an antagonist, the universe itself, suddenly capricious. There is psychological relief in that anthropomorphism. An external villain makes suffering seem less random, more contoured. In lab meetings and in sober commentary, physicists and seismologists patiently explained the numbers. They wrote papers and circulated models showing that the tidal influence of any plausible mass for 3I Atlas at the distances measured would be many orders of magnitude smaller than typical tectonic stresses. They compared accelerations, calculated strain rates, and showed the magnitudes did not line up. Similarly, space physicists compared the timing and energy of solar events to the geomagnetic indices that measure magnetospheric response. The data did not suggest a causal chain running from this interstellar arrival to global technological collapse. But numbers do not always move a frightened mind. The more technical the rebuttal, the more some retreated into an epistemic posture. They could be hiding something. It is here we encounter a different kind of phenomenon. Not a cosmic tidal effect, but a social tidal effect. The cascade of mistrust. When authorities and experts speak in careful hedges, the hedges can appear as fences. When we don't yet know becomes the most honest answer. Speculation rushes to fill the void. What can be learned from this interplay between evidence and imagination? First, that uncertainty invites stories, and stories are not neutral. They can comfort, but they can also destabilize. Second, that scientific method is itself a kind of ethical practice. It is the refusal to assert beyond what the models can support. In crises, that stance can feel cold, yet it also preserves collective capacity for action by avoiding misattributed causes. There are quieter lessons too. The event provoked widespread introspection about infrastructure resilience. Whether or not 3I Atlas played any role at all, the vulnerability revealed by server outages demanded attention. Engineers and planners looked at single points of failure, at centralized data farms, at the fragile dependencies of modern life. The comet's passage, mythic or otherwise, became a practical catalyst for hard work. In that way, even a fictional causal chain produced real dividends. Investment in redundancy, in distributed architecture, in systems less likely to fail catastrophically. We must also attend to the way the story amplified existing anxieties about climate, geopolitics, and planetary fragility. A passing object in the sky can become a mirror. People project onto it the anxieties they carry. This amplificatory effect is not new. Societies across history have mapped catastrophes onto celestial events, turning comets into portents. In the modern age, our portents wear new clothes: hashtags, overnight videos, and algorithmic amplification. The underlying human psychology remains ancient: pattern-seeking, agency attribution, and the desire to reduce frightening complexity to a single narrative thread. Still, the cosmos is not indifferent in the way that absolves us of responsibility. Even if 3I Atlas exerted no measurable influence on tectonics or networks, it challenged us. It asked how we respond to surprise, with hysteria or with curiosity and care. The healthier answers are twofold: invest in resilient systems and invest in public science communication that meets people's emotional needs as well as their intellectual ones. Consider how different responses might have played out in the immediate wake of the anomalies. A media ecology that prioritized calm clarity could have explained the physics and simultaneously acknowledged the fear. Engineers could have offered concrete steps to reassure the public about backups and timelines. Scientists could have released accessible tutorials about gravitational scaling and heliospheric dynamics. Instead, in many places, the reflex to sensationalize amplified worst-case scenarios. The result was not merely incorrect facts, it was a social mood that made rational action harder. The narrative arc that followed 3I, Atlas's perihelion, reveals something else about modern knowledge. Science is iterative, communal, and slow. The first claims of massive density were debated, refined, and in some cases corrected by follow-up observations. Polarimetry, that initially suggested unusual properties, was reinterpreted in light of different modeling assumptions. Spectra were reanalyzed with updated calibration. Each revision is not a failure of science, but its lifeblood. Hypotheses tested, thrown away, refined, or tentatively kept. Public discourse rarely appreciates this incrementalism. Attention moves faster than verification, but the careful work persisted, invisible to many, and eventually produced a consensus. While 3I, Atlas, was interesting and anomalous in composition, it was not massive enough at the measured distance to produce the planetary scale effects some had feared. There is a humility in these final assessments. They do not lessen the emotional truth of what people felt. The fear was real. The outages were real. So were the seismic alarms. Scientific clarity does not erase human experience. What it offers is context, a map that helps us navigate future events more safely and sanely. If we cast forward, a different image emerges. Suppose another interstellar object, someday, were to pass significantly closer, close enough to deliver an appreciable tidal effect. How would we act differently because of what we learned in 2025? Hopefully, with better infrastructure protocols, with clearer hazard communication, and with a public discourse better prepared to sit with uncertainty without latching instantly onto calamitous narratives. The story of 3I, Atlas, also contains a gentler moral, the need to cultivate what might be called epistemic patience. When confronting the extraordinary, patience is a defense against error and a crucible for wisdom. Epistemic patience is not passivity. It is active curiosity, combined with disciplined restraint. It is the willingness to ask for evidence, to wait for repeated measurements, to respect the slow hum of verification. There are small scenes that humanize this lesson. In a university observatory, a graduate student stayed awake to process the latest images. She drank tea and annotated spectra at dawn, then cycled home as the sky brightened. Her work was not glamorous. It was the patient translation of photons into understanding. In a town behind the quake line, a volunteer group checked on neighbors and fixed backup generators. In data centers around the planet, technicians reviewed failover logs and rewired redundancies. These are the quiet, constructive responses that the world so often needs. People doing small, steady things that reduce fragility. And there is a final, tender image. On a clear night after the furor had softened, an old radio amateur set his telescope on the faint, retreating point of light and listened. He thought of how long it had been traveling and of how briefly it had intersected with the fragile bowl of human affairs. He did not feel triumphant. He felt small and alert, grateful for the chance to learn, to fix what needed fixing, and to remember that the cosmos is not a moral judge, but a teacher, sometimes stern, sometimes indifferent, always vast. 3I, Atlas, did not undo our world. It stirred conversation. It revealed vulnerabilities. And it catalyzed practical work. In that way, it performed a necessary service. It prompted reflection and improvement. The terrifying story that a single interstellar visitor could destabilize the solar system turned out to be a myth born of human pattern-making. The truer story is subtler and perhaps more spiritually nourishing. An invitation to strengthen our systems, to practice epistemic patience, and to remember how easily fear can spread when facts are scarce. So when the next rumor arrives, when a comet passes, or a sensor registers an anomaly, remember the disciplined triad. Ask for the data, trace the inference, and separate the story you tell yourself from the evidence at hand. Hold your breath for a moment, and then breathe out. Let curiosity lead, let diligence govern, and let kindness guide the way you share what you know. We are small in a large night. We are also capable of learning. That is, perhaps, the most hopeful thing of all. Welcome back to Lunar Insomnia Zen, where we explore the quiet mysteries that live in the spaces between stars. Tonight, we journey to the Red Planet, where a faithful sentinel has watched over Mars for a decade, only to fall silent after witnessing something it was never meant to see. Let the weight of your body sink into your bed. Feel the gentle pull of gravity anchoring you to Earth. Close your eyes and breathe slowly as we drift together through a story of silence, secrets, and the visitor that came too close. Part 1. The Faithful Watcher. For 10 years, a machine called MAVEN has circled Mars. MAVEN, the Mars atmosphere, and volatile Evolutio and spacecraft, a testament to human ingenuity, launched in the year 2013, arriving at the Red Planet in 2014. For an entire decade, it has performed its duties flawlessly, studying the thin Martian atmosphere, watching solar storms sweep past, measuring the slow leakage of air into space that turned Mars from a warm, wet world into the cold desert it is today. Picture it now, as you settle deeper into comfort. A mechanical sentinel, roughly the size of a school bus, covered in golden insulation and gleaming solar panels. It orbits Mars in a long ellipse, sometimes diving close enough to taste the upper atmosphere, sometimes swinging far out to get a broader view. Every orbit, every measurement, every packet of data sent faithfully back to Earth across millions of miles of empty space. MAVEN has weathered solar storms that would have destroyed lesser machines. It has survived radiation, micrometeorite impacts, the harsh temperature swings of space. It was built to last, and it exceeded every expectation. Year after year, it kept working, kept watching, kept sending its quiet reports home. Engineers at NASA grew comfortable with its reliability. Mission scientists took for granted that when they sent a command, MAVEN would respond. When they checked their monitors each morning, data would be waiting. The spacecraft had become routine, dependable, almost invisible in its consistency, until it saw something it shouldn't have. Let your breath slow as we move forward through time toward the summer of 2025. Part 2. In early July of 2025, astronomers on Earth made a discovery. An interstellar object, only the third ever confirmed, was passing through our solar system. They named it 3I, Atlas, and it was strange. Unlike the first interstellar visitor, the tumbling, cigar-shaped Oumuamua, or the second visitor, the ice-spewing comet Borisov, this object was different. Silent, dark, moving on a trajectory that couldn't be traced back to any known star system. It came from the void between stellar neighborhoods, from the empty spaces where nothing should exist. As it passed through the inner solar system, every telescope that could be spared turned toward it. ground-based observatories. And, in a decision that would change everything, mission controllers decided to use MAVEN. Mars was in the right position. 3I, Atlas, would pass relatively close to the red planet, close enough that MAVEN's cameras, designed primarily for atmospheric work, might be able to capture images of the visitor. Not great images, perhaps, but something. Data points. A different angle than Earth-based observers could provide. The commands were uploaded. MAVEN, faithful as always, oriented itself, pointed its instruments at the coordinates provided, and on a date in early July, let's call it the 3rd day of the 7th month, it took its photographs. Brief exposures. Several frames. Light from an object that had traveled between the stars, now captured by a machine orbiting a world that humans had never walked upon. MAVEN stored the images in its memory, prepared to transmit them home. And then, silence. Part 3. The loss of signal. 42 hours after MAVEN photographed 3I Atlas, it stopped responding to commands from Earth. At first, the mission team wasn't alarmed. Communication glitches happen. Sometimes a spacecraft goes into safe mode, a protective state where it shuts down non-essential systems and waits for instructions. Sometimes solar activity interferes with signals. Sometimes you just have to wait. They waited. Sent more commands. Listened with the giant radio dishes of the Deep Space Network. Antennas scattered across the globe that can hear the whisper of a spacecraft's transmitter across hundreds of millions of miles. Nothing. MAVEN, which had spoken faithfully for 10 years, had gone silent. More concerning, the images it had taken of 3I, Atlas, were never received. They should have been transmitted during the routine data downlink that happens several times per week, but the downlink never occurred. The last successful contact was before the photographs were taken. The images existed somewhere in MAVEN's memory banks, stored in radiation-hardened solid-state drives, waiting to be retrieved. But the spacecraft that held them had stopped talking. Feel the weight of that silence now. Imagine the mission control room, engineers staring at screens showing no new data. Like a heartbeat that simply ceases between one moment and the next. Part 4. The official story. NASA released a statement. Technical language, carefully worded. MAVEN had experienced an unexpected anomaly. Engineers were working to diagnose the issue. The spacecraft was approximately 10 years old, well beyond its primary mission duration. While built to last, all machines eventually experience failures. The statement mentioned, almost in passing, that data from recent observations, including images of 3I, Atlas, had been corrupted and were not recoverable, not lost, corrupted. As if MAVEN had taken the photographs, stored them, and then something had happened to the data itself. Scrambled bits, random noise. Information transformed into meaninglessness. The space community accepted this explanation with little question. MAVEN was old. Space is harsh. Hardware fails. It was unfortunate that the failure occurred right after photographing an interstellar object, but coincidences happen. The story was filed away. Mission engineers continued their recovery efforts. The world moved on. But let's pause here, in the comfortable darkness of your room, and consider what wasn't said. Part 5. The questions nobody asked. MAVEN had operated flawlessly for 10 years. Through solar storms that stripped away portions of Mars's atmosphere, radiation bursts that would have fried unshielded electronics, temperature extremes that cycled between scorching sunlight and frozen shadow. It had survived. It had adapted. It had continued its mission through conditions that would destroy most machines. And then, 42 hours after photographing an interstellar object, it experienced a catastrophic failure that not only stopped all communication but also corrupted specific data? Just the images of 3I Atlas. Not the atmospheric measurements from the same time period. Not the other routine observations. Just those particular photographs. Let your mind drift over this coincidence. Test its edges. Does it feel natural? Or does it feel like a shape that's been forced into a space where it doesn't quite fit? There's another detail, barely mentioned in official reports. Another spacecraft was watching. Mars Express, operated by the European Space Agency, had also been in position to observe 3I Atlas. Its orbit around Mars brought it into viewing range around the same time as MAVEN. It, too, collected data. Spectroscopic readings, information about the object's composition, its surface properties, the way it reflected and absorbed light. Mars Express did not fall silent. It continued operating normally. Its data was received, stored, analyzed. But when journalists asked ESA scientists about their findings, about what they had detected from 3I Atlas, they declined to comment. Politely, but firmly. Please, direct all questions to NASA, they said. We're coordinating with our American colleagues on this matter. 2 spacecraft, 2 sets of observations. One goes silent, its data corrupted. The other continues working, but its operators won't talk. Breathe slowly. Let the pattern emerge in your mind like stars becoming visible as your eyes adjust to darkness. Part 6. The nature of the visitor. While MAVEN's silence deepened, 3I Atlas continued its journey, and as more telescopes tracked it, more anomalies emerged. The object showed no coma, no cloud of gas and dust that typically surrounds comets as they warm up approaching the Sunday. It produced no tail. It remained solid, dark, unchanging as it crossed through the inner solar system. Its trajectory was analyzed and reanalyzed. Unlike previous interstellar visitors that could be traced back to known star systems or general regions of the galaxy, 3I Atlas came from nowhere. Its path, when extended backward through time, led to empty space. The void between stellar neighborhoods, places where stars are sparse and isolated, where nothing should form, where no planetary system should exist to launch wayward objects into interstellar space. It was as if the object had simply appeared in that empty region, already moving, already on course. And there was something else. Something noticed by astronomers but discussed only in technical papers. Buried in sections about rotational dynamics and photometric data. 3I Atlas was spinning. All objects in space rotate, tumbling, spinning, wobbling as they travel. But 3I Atlas was rotating with unusual precision. Its period was almost exactly 24 hours. 23.93 hours, to be precise. The same as Earth. Let that coincidence settle over you like a blanket. An interstellar object, supposedly a natural fragment of rock and ice from some unknown system, spinning at the same rate as our home planet. Imagine a bottle tossed into the ocean, washing up on a distant shore, and when you open it, the message inside is written in your native language. Possible? Yes. Natural? Perhaps. But strange. Deeply strange. Part 7. The Approach. As summer turned to autumn in the year 2025, 3I Atlas continued inward. Its trajectory had been calculated precisely now. The object would make its closest approach to Earth on the 21st of December, the winter solstice, the longest night of the year in the northern hemisphere. The predicted distance, 1.2 million kilometers, about 3 times the distance between Earth and Moon. In cosmic terms, practically next door. closer than any confirmed interstellar object had ever come to our planet. Close enough to study in detail, close enough to photograph with moderate-sized telescopes, close enough that if it were to change trajectory slightly, unexpectedly it could alter its path significantly. Space agencies prepared their instruments. Amateur astronomers planned viewing sessions. The press began writing articles. "Interstellar visitor to provide holiday sky show," the headline said. "Rare cosmic guest arriving for winter solstice." The tone was celebratory, excited. Another chance to observe something from beyond our solar system. A messenger from the greater galaxy, passing through on its eternal journey. But in certain rooms, in certain facilities, the mood was different. Quieter, more tense. Maven remained silent. The images it had taken, the only close-range photographs of 3I Atlas from the Mars perspective, a viewpoint that would never be replicated, remained locked in its memory or corrupted beyond recovery, depending on which explanation you believed. And Mars Express, still functioning perfectly, still sent data, but ESA still wouldn't discuss what they had found. Their scientists attended conferences, published papers on other topics, and deflected every question about 3I Atlas with practiced professionalism. Ongoing analysis, they said. Can't comment on preliminary findings, they explained. Coordinate with NASA, they suggested. Part 8. The Weight of Silence. Let's think about silence for a moment. The silence of your room right now, broken only by your breathing and perhaps the distant sounds of the world outside. Comfortable silence, natural silence. But there are other kinds of silence. The silence of held breath, the silence before a storm, the silence of someone choosing not to speak when they have something important to say. That was the silence surrounding 3I Atlas as December approached. Academic papers were published, yes. Technical data was shared, certainly. But there was a quality to the discussion, a carefulness, a tendency to focus on orbital mechanics and photometric measurements while avoiding certain other questions. Questions like, why does it spin with Earth's period? Questions like, what exactly did Mars Express detect? Questions like, what was in Maven's photographs before they were corrupted? And beneath it all, the question nobody wanted to ask out loud. In the comfortable darkness of approaching sleep, you can acknowledge ideas that seem too strange in daylight. What if 3I Atlas was made, constructed, launched, sent on a journey across the light years with purpose and intention? What would it mean to photograph such an object? To capture images of something that was never meant to be seen clearly until it chose to reveal itself? What would it mean for a spacecraft to see too much? Part 9. The Theories. In online forums and late-night conversations, theories multiplied. Some people suggested Maven had been hit by debris, a micrometeorite, that damaged its antenna. Plausible. Space is full of hazards. Others wondered if solar activity was to blame, a coronal mass ejection from the sun that fried Maven's electronics at just the wrong moment. Possible. The sun is unpredictable. Some proposed that Maven's age had simply caught up with it. 10 years is a long time in space. Components wear out, memories degrade, failures cascade. The timing with 3I Atlas was coincidental, unfortunate but meaningless. But there were other voices, quieter, more speculative. What if Maven saw something on the surface of 3I Atlas that wasn't supposed to be visible yet? Structure, geometry, evidence of artificiality. And what if the object, whether through autonomous systems or remote instruction, responded to being photographed, sent out a pulse, an electromagnetic burst, something that scrambled the data and silenced the spacecraft that had seen too much? Science fiction, the skeptic said. Paranoid thinking. Conspiracy theories born from coincidence and ignorance. Perhaps they were right. But then, why wouldn't ESA discuss their findings? Their data was intact. What were they coordinating with NASA? What were they seeing in their spectroscopic analysis that required such careful silence? Let these questions swirl in your mind like leaves in autumn wind. Significant but distant. Interesting but not alarming. Part 10. December approaches. As you lie here now, your body heavy with approaching sleep, 3i Atlas continues its journey. Each day it grows closer. Each night it becomes slightly brighter in telescopes turned toward its position among the stars. December the 21st is approaching, the winter solstice, the longest night, the moment when Earth's northern hemisphere tilts furthest from the sun, when darkness claims its maximum territory, when ancient peoples built fires and told stories to hold back the cold and the unknown. On that night, 3i Atlas will pass at its closest, 1.2 million kilometers. Close enough to see with good amateur equipment. Close enough that every major observatory will be watching. Close enough that whatever it is, rock, ice, or something else, we will see it more clearly than any interstellar object ever observed. And then it will continue on, accelerating as it swings around the sun, heading back out into the cosmic deep. In a few months, it will pass beyond the orbit of Mars again, heading toward Jupiter and the outer solar system. In a few years, it will cross beyond Neptune and Pluto, into the Kuiper belt. Eventually, it will leave our sun's influence entirely and return to interstellar space, a visitor passing through, here briefly, then gone forever, unless it changes course, unless it does something that natural objects don't do, unless, on that longest night of the year, it reveals itself to be something other than what it appears. Part 11. The beauty of mystery. But here's the beautiful thing about uncertainty, about questions without answers. They remind us how much we don't know, how new we are to this cosmic story. Humans have been looking at the stars with telescopes for only about 400 years. We've been sending machines into space for less than 70 years. We've had a presence beyond Earth, satellites, space stations, lunar landings, for a single human lifetime. We are beginners, infants. Our first tentative steps into a cosmos that has been evolving for 13.8 billion years. And in that context, what's the harm in wondering? What's the danger in asking questions? Even questions that seem unlikely or strange. Maybe Maven failed naturally. Maybe 3i Atlas is just an unusual rock. Its 24-hour rotation, a random chance. Its origin from empty space, simply a limitation of our trajectory calculations. Maybe. Or maybe, on a day in early July 2025, a spacecraft looked at something it wasn't meant to see. And maybe it's been silent ever since. Maybe, on December the 21st, we'll understand why. Or maybe we'll simply watch a dark object pass by in the night, another mystery moving through an infinite cosmos, its secrets intact. Part 12. The peace of not knowing. As sleep approaches, as your consciousness begins to blur and drift, there's a strange comfort in mystery. In questions without immediate answers, in the knowledge that the universe is larger and stranger than we can fully comprehend. You don't need to solve the puzzle of 3i Atlas tonight. You don't need to decide whether Maven's silence is natural or significant. You don't need to worry about what December might bring. All you need to do is rest, breathe, allow the darkness to embrace you. Somewhere above the atmosphere, 3i Atlas continues its approach. Silent. Dark. Spinning once every 24 hours, matching Earth's rhythm, like a clock synchronized to our world. Somewhere in orbit around Mars, Maven floats in silence, perhaps damaged beyond repair, perhaps waiting, perhaps holding secrets in its memory that will never be downloaded, never be seen, never be understood. And somewhere in the European Space Agency's facilities, scientists study data from Mars Express, see things in their spectroscopic readings that they've chosen not to discuss, coordinate with NASA on matters they won't explain. All of this is happening. All of it is real. But it's not your burden to carry tonight. Tonight, you rest. You dream. You trust that whatever comes, humanity will face it together. That if 3I, Atlas, is simply a rock, we'll learn from studying it. And if it's something more, we'll adapt, as we always have, to new realities and possibilities. Part 13. The Descent. Your breathing has slowed now. In and out. Deep and regular. The boundary between waking and sleeping grows thin as fog. Imagine yourself floating. Not in space, that's too cold, too vast. Instead, imagine floating in warm, dark water. Perfectly buoyant, perfectly safe. The water holds you gently, supporting every part of your body. Above you, far above, you can see stars reflected on the water's surface, distant lights, unreachable but beautiful. Among them, one light that's slightly different. Not a star, but a visitor. 3I, Atlas. Gliding silently through the cosmic ocean. Its origin unknown. Its purpose a mystery. You watch it move, slow and steady. There's no fear in the watching. Only curiosity. Only wonder. If it's natural, it's a marvel of cosmic accident. A fragment of another world that has traveled unimaginable distances to pass by ours. If it's artificial, it's a marvel of engineering and determination, proof that intelligence can reach across the void. Either way, it's beautiful. Either way, it reminds you that you're part of something larger, a species that looks up, that wonders, that sends machines to other planets to keep watch. That notices when silence falls where there should be signal. The water supports you. The stars shine above. And slowly, gently, you sink deeper into the warm darkness. Not drowning. There's no panic here. Just the peaceful descent into sleep, into dreams, into the quiet place where your mind can rest and restore itself. Part 14. The promise of morning. When you wake, and you will wake, refreshed and renewed, the mystery will still be there. 3I, Atlas, will still be approaching. Maven will still be silent. Scientists will still be coordinating in quiet rooms, discussing things they're not ready to share. But you'll face it all with clarity, with the resilience that comes from proper rest, with the perspective that comes from stepping back and seeing the larger pattern. Maybe someone will re-establish contact with Maven. Maybe the corrupted data can be recovered. Maybe ESA will decide to share their findings. Maybe December the 21st will bring revelations that change everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. Or maybe none of that will happen. Maybe the mystery will deepen. Maybe we'll watch 3I, Atlas, pass by and continue wondering, the questions unanswered, the silence unbroken. Both possibilities are acceptable. Both are part of being human in an incomprehensibly vast cosmos. We don't get all the answers. We don't solve every puzzle. We live with uncertainty, and somehow that's enough. Part 15. Good night, traveler. The stars continue their ancient dance. Mars orbits the sun, carrying its silent sentinel. 3I, Atlas, falls inward, counting down the distance to its closest approach. And you rest here, safe and warm, on a small planet that somehow produced beings capable of noticing all of this. capable of wondering, capable of sending machines to watch distant worlds and distant visitors. Sleep now, dear listener. Let the mysteries of the cosmos wait until tomorrow. Let Maven's silence be a problem for NASA's engineers. Let 3I, Atlas, be a question for astronomers to puzzle over. Tonight, you are released from all of it. Tonight, you simply exist, breathing slowly, resting deeply, dreaming whatever dreams come. The universe is vast, time is long, mysteries are abundant, and you are exactly where you need to be here, now, safe, drifting into the peaceful darkness of sleep. When December comes, when the longest night arrives, when 3I, Atlas, makes its closest approach, you'll be ready, rested, clear-minded, open to whatever truth reveals itself. But that's for later. For now, just sleep. Just breathe. Just let go. The visitor is coming, but not tonight. Tonight belongs to rest, to peace, to dreams. This has been Lunar Insomnia Zen. May your sleep be deep and your dreams be gentle. When you wake, the stars will still be there, waiting to share their secrets. Until then, good night. The universe is watching over you. Good night, traveler. Good night. Welcome to Inner Peace Portal. Tonight we move slowly. Sit with your breath. Let the friction of urgency ease away. In this space we do not demand answers. We gather questions and hold them like seeds. We will follow a quiet visitor from the deep between stars. 3I,